Yes, guys, I'm Si. Welcome to Cardiff City World. The shackles must come off. The Cardiff City are praying for a fairy tale ending to the season. It looks bleak, but it ain't over yet. It ain't over yet. There's 2 games to go. First and foremost, Cardiff City must win their 2 games of football. Simple, yeah. Maybe not, but most of all, Cardiff must do that first and foremost. Take it to the final day, and that's when anything can happen. Then we all know this. Anything can happen on that final day. The nerves set in, the pressure's on. Who can deal with it? Deflections, penalties, red cards can all change the game. But first and foremost, this West Bromwich Albion on Saturday. It's going to be so difficult. Look, don't get me wrong. Cardiff have been so poor, and it was better versus Oxford. I really thought it was much better against Oxford. Just if nothing else, the movement off the ball and the pace at which we moved the ball was just a nice change. But as is tradition, we look at the opponent first and we have a little chat about them, and it hasn't been very quiet for them either recently. What I will say is this is pre-recorded. It is out earlier because hopefully, you're all at the Glen Loovens event with me now, as we're like, well, I'll be getting ready now as this goes out, but I'll see you guys in a couple of hours, and we're going to have a cracking, positive night full of good vibes. But as always, we promise 7 days a week content from Cardiff City World, and that's what we give you. So let's take a look at West Brom. Absolutely turgid form, which obviously means they're going to beat Cardiff, which is all tradition at this point when teams are on a bad run. They've lost 5 of the last 6. They've won 1. They lost most recently 3-1 to Derby County, and they've sacked Tony Rhodri with James Morrison taking over in the interim till the end of the season. It's remarkable, really, but I think whenever you bring in managers partway through the season, it's a risk because it's not their players, it's not their pre-season, etc. And even someone as experienced as Tony Mowbray couldn't get them going, and they, their playoff push completely fell off a cliff. Most recently, a journalist, Martin O'Connor, who had worked alongside Mowbray when he was at Birmingham City, just said, he just hadn't got the best out of those West Brom players, and that's difficult. Mowbray was sacked on Monday by West Bromwich Albion after a run of 5 defeats from the past 6, with the club's playoffs hopes increasingly remote with 2 games of the season remaining. And that's the thing, is they have got a slim chance of getting to the playoffs, which is problematic for Cardiff. Really, we want them to be out of it, but look, it is what it is. Will we see a whole host of changes? I don't think so. I think similar to what Aaron Ramsey did on Monday, you'll see a similar setup to what they've gone with in recent weeks, recent times. When they played Coventry, they lined up in like a 4-2-3-1. They got some good players, man. It's a strange one that they fell off a cliff the way they did, especially because Tony Mowbray's a proven good manager. But it also goes to show, as we've discussed numerous times, it is about that, the right manager, the right club, the right place at the right time. It's not just as simple as this person's going to be great because they've been great elsewhere. Or this person's going to be poor because they've been poor elsewhere. It doesn't work like that. You have to be everything has to fit into place nicely. Derby County, with a couple of ex-City players scoring the goals, beat West Brom 3-1. Ebo Adams getting the first, Mendes Lang getting the last. You make up that what you will, I suppose. But those Cardiff players thriving. In terms of the West Brom side, it was very similar. They did change the midfield, the whole midfield for that Derby game, with Bartley dropping back into defence, and they brought in Diagana and Dicate. A lot of athleticism and power in there. But, will they bring in someone like Carlin Grant? Seems to come on about the hour mark for up front through the middle. Is he going to come back and haunt us? That's the question you've got to ask. They like a 4-2-3-1. At their best, they're a very, very good football inside. They'll move you around, and then they'll look to exploit you in the wide areas creating space for the number 10 Price to just float in, make late runs beyond the striker, or find little pockets of space. The two midfielders generally will, if they go with Dagana and Dakate, they both will kind of sit, and the fullbacks will go on, and they'll almost defend in like a little box four with the Mason Holgate, Bartley, Diagana, and Dakate as a four, holding the center of the pitch. Then the wingers and the fullbacks will push high, and they'll try and stretch the pitch wide and create space then for the striker and the number 10 to find the space. Interestingly, very similar to what Cardiff tried to do on Easter Monday, with the wingers right on the touchline, trying to create space for the runners, for Alex Robertson, for Mansberg, for people to get into those spaces around the box and link up the play. So look, West Brom, like I said, on their day, very, very difficult to break down, very, very difficult to exploit. But regardless of the manager, as we saw with our performance on Monday, when you're in terrible form or bad form, we're in, I would say, in bad form, they're in terrible form, it is difficult to just click it into place and suddenly forget all those bad things and just get your confidence and your belief back. So hopefully, from a Cardiff point of view, they'll still be a bit shaky. And then Cardiff have got to try and exploit that with the atmosphere, the fans, make it rowdy, make it difficult, get an early goal, and try and exploit those nerves. So I think they'll go with Griffiths in goal. They'll have the Furlong, Hegem fullbacks. You have Mason Holgate, Bartley in defence. And then I do think they'll go. I hope they don't actually, but I think they will go with Diagana and Dakate as their two sort of pivot, or their double pivot. I actually really would prefer they didn't, because one thing I think Cardiff struggle with is like pace and power in the middle of the park. So I'd actually prefer if they went with an alternative double pivot, if I'm being honest. So we're like, what do they play in the Coventry game? I'm sure I saw. Yeah, so in the Coventry game, they played Price and Mowat as a double pivot. So they had Diakate and Diagana on the bench. And look, they've got players, we've mentioned, they've got Jed Wallace, they've got Jonathan Swift, they've got Armstrong, they've got Diakate, Diagana, Carlin Grant. They have players who can do damage. In terms of the double pivot, I wonder if he may go for a little. I think he'll go with Diakate and Diagana. Like I would, if I was picking a side against Cardiff, I'm going with the two athletic, mobile, strong, physical, pacey midfielders, because I think that's our weakness. But I actually think they might go with a bit of a mix, and I think we might see Diagana and Mowat as the double pivot. And then I think they might go with, I think Fellows will play off one side. And then I guess it's where they feel they can get at Cardiff is probably like the most where the decisions come into it, because they've, like I've mentioned, they've got some real good players on their day. They are just devoid of confidence, and any sort of momentum is not with them. I think for me, I guess I'm going to have to go with what I would do to a certain extent if I was them. But I think Fellows definitely plays off the right. I think you might see Carlin Grant either off the left or in the 10. So I'm going to go Price as the 10. I'm going to go Carlin Grant off the left and Lancashire up front, simply because I think you might even go with Wallace. But yeah, I think Carlin Grant will play, because I think he'll be keen to play well, to play against. It's going to be interesting. So that's the lineup that I think West Brom will go with. Their man to watch, they've got a few, but I'm going to go with Fellows. I think he's a real dangerous right-sided player. He can cut in, he can go on the outside, and what Furlong will get up and support him. And if they do play Mowat in the middle, he is very good at pulling the strings. So I think Fellows could be a real danger on that left side, especially if Cardiff stick with Callum O'Dowda. Fellows versus O'Dowda worries me a little bit because I think he could exploit the space that Callum leaves when he pushes forward. And we have to push forward. We've got to win the football match. At the end of the day, anything less than a win and we're down, we have to win the football match. We have to try and take it into the last game. So that's what you've got to do. In terms of recent form against West Brom, we drew most recently 0-0 in October. In the February before that, we lost 2-0 to them. Before that, we lost 1-0 to them. Before that, we drew 1-1. And before that, we drew 0-0. We haven't beaten West Brom in a long time. So we're gonna have to buck a lot of trends. Most obviously, the form of the season. But we will need to buck the trend if we're going to create a fairy tale and we're going to pull off a miracle. So yeah, Mowat and Fellows are the two which I think could cause Cardiff some issues. In terms of how Cardiff line up, it's tricky because I thought we were better, but we still didn't really create a great deal of chances on Easter Monday. There's a couple where we probably should do better with the final decision, but we've got to do it. We've got to fight. We've got to keep going. Obviously, I think the keeper's the keeper. Is where it is. That's the only keeper available. I don't see him putting the young lad in for the last game. We're not in that situation. So it's going to be Howberth in goal. I think Fish and Chambers will be the centre-back pairings. I think NG is the right back, and I think O'Dowd is the left back. I think Rinamoto retains his place. And I think probably Mansverk does too, actually. I thought Mansverk was really, really good on Monday. I see a few people criticising his final ball, but I thought Rinamoto proved that he's wasted at right back. My one kind of thing would be trying to get Dye Turnbull in there, but I don't really see where you can get him in unless you change the system. I think Rinamoto, you need his energy, and I think Mansverk, you need his ball carrying ability. I think the three behind Salic is where you could see a change. Kean, decision-making wise, was not the best on Monday. Willock was good for an hour, probably his best performance in a Cardiff City shirt by some distance. Will Alves didn't have the best game off the bench. Ruben never really got into it. Mate looked okay off the bench. Tanner looked unfit. So, I mean, I say that I think that's where the changes will be. The subs that come on didn't really make a stake a claim for a starting spot. So, I mean, the only change I could potentially see is you maybe go with like switching out Ashford for Alves, or maybe Ruben for Robertson, just to try and be a bit more attacking. I think Willock retains his place and probably should. And I think Salic obviously retains his place. I think I'd like to see Ruben in there. It's difficult because I thought Alex Robertson looked a lot better. Man to watch, I'm going to go with Rinamoto. I thought his energy made a real difference in the midfield. He gave us legs, which we've lacked massively. And I think Mansverk gives us a bit of physicality. I wonder whether after Aaron Ramsey's had a week to work with him, you'd like to think that he'll build on what was a pretty good performance Monday. Will he make changes is the question. Well, could you put a Bagan in at left back and move O'Dowda up further up the pitch? Could you then switch Willock to the right? Maybe that could be an option. It's going to be fascinating because I think this week will be more along the lines of what Aaron Ramsey's vision of football is, or vision of a team is, because he's had a week to work with them. On Monday, he literally had a day to work with teams. So he's probably gone with what he was thinking in his head over the season, like, oh, I should have done this, should have done that. But I think this week, where he's worked with him and the Gunter and the rest have worked with him for a week, I think you see a bit more along the lines of what he thinks is the best side from the players available. My one to watch Rhodri, because I think if Rhodri has a good game in the middle, he's not only capable of giving us legs and energy and aggression in the middle, but he can pick a pass. Him and Mansverk, good little partnership they built. Got to make sure that they don't leave Callum Chambers isolated, because if you get Callum Chambers one-on-one against the fellows or Carlin Grant, he could be in real difficulty because he hasn't got the pace. Fish defensively is very good, winning headers, getting his body on the line, put his body in the way is excellent, but he's still young. I do like the Fish Chambers partnership, and I frustrated that we haven't just had that as our partnership most of the season, so they could really build a partnership. But Chambers does worry me with his lack of pace. Normally you think, well, the left back will cover him because O'Dowda's got a bit of pace, but O'Dowda of the four is the one who's kind of bombing forward. Perry tends to just push up into an area rather than overlapping. So it is tricky. What changes would you make? I mean, let me know in the comments. It'd be good to have a read of them when I get home tonight after the Loovens event. Who would you change? Would you make a change to the midfield three and Rinomoto, Mansverk, Robertson? Would you bring a Ruben in and be much more aggressive? Would you go 4-4-2? Would you keep Willock in the side? Did he do enough for you to retain his place on that left? Or would you like to see an Alves come in, maybe a Mate, Katana, one of the youngsters from the academy? Callum Robinson may be fit. There's a few different options for Cardiff. Ultimately, we've got to find a way to win. I think the way to get at West Brom is press high, put them under pressure. They are not in, like I said, they're not confident. They're not got the momentum. So try and play on those nerves. Put them under pressure. Don't be afraid to put some crosses in the box. Work, get Salich running the channels and turn them around, face their own goal, put them under pressure. Get corners, get throw-ins. Just make them defend. Make them have it around their own box. And ultimately, when it comes down to it, we've got to get the final ball right. You've got to get that final decision right. And I don't want to harp back to it, but, Kean Ashford has that opportunity to play Robertson and he makes the wrong decision and goes to the outside. It's not just him. It was a collective thing of the final ball. The final decision wasn't up to it on Monday. And that is a confidence thing. That is a belief thing. So you'd like to think this week, Aaron and Chris Gunter and the rest of the coaches have kept them relaxed, kept them focused, and just try to put a bit more belief and confidence into them so that they play a bit more naturally. And we know that individually these players are good footballers. Some of them are phenomenal footballers on their day when they play off the cuff and stuff. We haven't seen it this year. So they've got to be up for it. The manager's got to get it right. Coaches have got to have had to get it right this week. When the chances come, we have to take them. And obviously, as fans, we've got to make sure that we're behind the team, behind the manager, and we go down fighting. Said it in January. We go down, but let's not go down with a whimper. Let's go down with a fight. Most of all, let's take it to the last day of the season. I think if we can take it to the last day of the season, there's a good chance we can stay up. It suddenly becomes much more interesting. Last game of the season, Luton have West Brom. Will they be a bit better, with this new manager in for a second game? Who knows? Luton have got Coventry on Saturday, and we'll know how they do on Saturday before we play. And then you've obviously got Hull play Derby Saturday, and then Hull travel to Portsmouth on the final day of the season, which is such a difficult game. So we really looking at it, you're thinking Derby probably winning is the way for us to stay up. Derby winning and then Hull lose to Portsmouth is probably the way we stay up. But we have to do our bit. You look at Derby's fixtures, they've got Hull and then they've got Stoke. you'd expect them to take 3 points from those 2 games, but you never know. They end up getting 2 draws. We get a couple of wins. We stay up. So we've just got to do our thing. Just got to win our 2 games, and then whatever will be elsewhere. Because ultimately, we can't control what happens elsewhere. What we can do, we know that results in this day and age, we know that results and goals filter through to the grounds. So if we can get in the lead and we can win the games, those teams will feel that pressure as those goals are going in. So let's get after West Brom early. Let's create a phenomenal atmosphere at the Cardiff City Stadium, and let's go down with a fight. Keep the faith, my friends. As I said at the top of this preview, we ain't dead yet.